Notice: be aware that changes have been made to the script to suit audio.
NJ Creative Writing presents Magazine Free, A Distant World, a comic concept, written and read by NJ. Hi, NJ here, and welcome to Issue 3. For this issue, I'm going to cover a comic concept I made in July 2023. The story was inspired by a poem that I first heard at a poetry slam. This poem was The World Loved by Moonlight, written by Jane Hirschfield. One thing about poetry is that you need to understand the context that it was written in due to how imagery and language shifts over time. This is probably why poetry is such a fascinating area of study. Admittedly, I'm not very experienced in this field, so do look up scholars and fans more versed in this medium. I also recommend looking at more of Jane Hirschfield's poetry too. Now I will give a quick plot summary of the comic. A princess living on an outpost wishes to visit a planet. This goes against her father, who wishes for her to remain on the outpost. She leaves while her father is sleeping and flies towards the planet. This is where the original comic ended. However, I added a script to the end of the magazine. It shows what happened after the princess lands on the planet. She discovers a ruined city before being attacked by a masked figure. This ending feels better and ends the story on an enticing hook, encouraging the reader to continue on to the next issue. To make the comic, I wrote a script and sketched basic character designs along with a storyboard. I then sketched the comic onto A4 paper before transferring it onto tracing paper using a fine liner. Reflecting on the concept, I feel it's an interesting idea for a series. The princess discovers that the world is in a terrible state and tries to help it. This idea of a character discovering that they're on the wrong side of a conflict and changing sides is not a new plotline. A semi-recent example of this is Finn in Star Wars The Force Awakens from 2015 when he defects from the First Order. Now, I have a lot of gripes with how Finn's character is handled in the sequel trilogy, but that's not what we're discussing in this magazine. Another source of inspiration appears to be Pretty Guardian Sailor Moon, written and drawn by Naoko Takeuchi between 1991 and 1997. For example, the masked figure in the comic concept can be compared to the character Sailor Venus in her Sailor V persona. Granted, I hadn't read the Sailor Moon manga at the time of drawing the comic, so my knowledge came from clips of the 90s anime and the 2014 retelling. As such, the inspiration is more superficial. Although between acquiring volumes of Vampire Knight and Full Metal Alchemist, my introduction to manga is going to be a bit of a throwback to the early 2000s. Being born in 2000, I was too young to experience this era of anime and manga, so it'd be interesting to read these works. If I was to continue the story, I'd write about how the princess works with others to help free the planet. Personally, I feel it's important to emphasize the idea of people working together rather than a single figure saving the world. Overall, everything would need to be refined and planned to be a fully realized publication. And one thing I must acknowledge is that I'm not great at drawing, and if this comic was made into a proper publication, I would collaborate with an artist to bring the script to life. I do want to get better at drawing, and I would like to explore that in the videos I make for the channel. Regardless, I hope the concept of this comic is interesting. Enjoy, and thank you for listening. Part 2, Comic Concept, A Distant World, Audio Version. A Distant World, a comic concept written and drawn by NJ, inspired by the poem The World Loved by Moonlight by Jane Hirschfield, adapted for audio by NJ. "Look at it, my daughter," said the princess's father. "One day it will be your turn to look over this planet. All of this will be yours." The princess looked over the vast planet in front of her. For 18 years she had lived on the outpost, but not once had she visited the planet. It was then a thought hit her, and she turned to face her father. "Have you ever visited the planet, father?" she asked. "Yes, but we are observers, not adventurers," he said. "Besides, nothing down there is worth the trip." "But surely, I will need to visit the planet too, father. You claim we look over this planet, but how can I do that if I don't know what's going on down there?" Her father's eye twitched. "My child," he said, "what's down there is not worth your time. Now, no more talk of visiting the planet." Later the princess sat alone in the outpost garden. She plucked one flower from the ground. From the garden, she had a clear view of the planet. For a while, she looked between it and the flower in her hand. Did they have flowers down there? It'd be nice to know. Then it hit her. What was stopping her from visiting the planet? Her father, technically, but there weren't any physical barriers. It was then she made a decision. "I have to visit it," she thought. Later, the princess, now wearing a hooded cape, looked at her father from the balcony. He lay sleeping, the sheer curtains gently billowing around his form. "Goodbye, father," she said. "Don't worry, I'll be back soon." With a hop, the princess left the outpost and began her journey to the planet. Carefully, she made her way through the atmosphere and in the clouds. Soon she was flying over a city full of tall skyscrapers with a large river weaving through it. But something was wrong. The architecture was decaying, and ivy had begun wrapping around the bases of the buildings. It was quiet too. That's weird, she thought. Landing on top of a skyscraper, she looked around the ruined landscape. The princess could hear nothing from the streets below. What happened here? She said. Suddenly, a flash of light appeared in the corner of her eye. Quickly, she rolled out of the way. Looking around, the princess saw her attacker. They were standing on top of a rusty radio tower. The princess tried to make out who they were, but the clouds shrouded their form. "Who are you?" she asked. The clouds parted, revealing the figure's form. They had long hair and wore a mask over their eyes. They pointed down at the princess. "You, from the sky above," they said. "I will not allow you to defile this city again." Again? The figure pulled a circular amulet from their pocket. It started to glow, bathing them in a white light. "This roof will be the end of your conquest," they said. With a flick, they fired a shower of light towards the princess. Her vision went white, and all she could hear was a high-pitched ringing. Part 3, Ending Note. Thank you for listening to issue 3 of this magazine. I hope you enjoyed it. All the best, NJ.